All right, everybody, welcome to another riveting session of the Salesforce Business Analyst Trailblazer Community Group virtual. Today, we are mastering data migration as business analysts, a topic that I often struggle with which is why I put on my little opening. Has anybody written a user story for data migration before? Like, I'm not really quite sure how we fit in, so I'm excited for our topic today. But before, we're going to have some housekeeping items. First, will be recorded, edited, and posted on YouTube. Perhaps I will even be clearer since I am wearing gigantic new headphones. I figure the bigger the headphones, the clearer I will come through. Your acceptance criteria for this session. Please throw your thoughts in the chat. We'll do our best to keep up. Do not spam the chat with nonsense. Please try to keep it topic specific. I also take puns and cute quips and jokes. Please raise your hand if you want to speak. We all kind of throw on presenter mode here, but do prefer that you raise your hand to speak, at least until we've got our open part of the end of the session. Please feel free to use the Q&A for questions. I can actually even turn on the Q&A now so I don't forget until halfway through, like I've done several sessions already. So great. If you want the question, throw it in the QA. And keep an eye for pin posts at the top. We will do our best to keep I know the chat can move fast, so we'll try to keep the most exciting things up the top. Our agenda, introductions, master data as a business analyst with Jean-Pierre. Q&A, we've got our SFBA news and opportunities and some chit chat at the end. I am Vanessa Grant, a badass BA, also a recently failed MuleSoft associate. I just couldn't fit the rest of the word. That was yesterday. I have like 3 tests to take this week due to vouchers expiring because of this certification nonsense, but I'm 13 times certified still, and 15 years with Salesforce, and excited to lead the group today. And I am joined by...
Hello, everyone. I do project delivery. I've done all those things. I don't have to read them out. I've written 2 books, Salesforce Discovery and Projects. Third one coming out this weekend. I definitely, I got my husband. He's my final UAT go, no go dude. And he's been super busy, but he's given me some Sev2 issues to work on, which I shall fix this week. And I am determined to get it published by the end of this week. It will be called Salesforce Consulting 101. That will follow the story of Clem and the first year at Cloudacious. And so I'm looking forward to that. So that is me.
And I'm going to pause real quick because I did not throw a photo in, but Pei and I had a recent reunion in London. We're at London's Calling, and I saw her session. And I think at least 3 times since your session, Pei, I have quoted the most quotable thing I think from your session, which was awesome. Comes from the top to the bottom, but so does poop. Poop also comes from the top and drips down to the bottom. So make sure that you have solid leadership, folks. There's I probably misquoted you, but I think everybody.
That's okay. You're like my kids. My kids at the age, their favorite word was shampoo because it had a specific, subset. But I'm happy that I made an impact.
It was the wisdom. There's wisdom in that. It's not because it says poo. All right, Jean-Pierre, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you, Vanessa and Pei, for having me today. I'm since very recently a leader of the Slack community chapter in Paris. I've been doing that for a few months. First session was in January, so I'm very happy to be doing that. And this is actually also the first time I'm speaking to a foreign community group. I've been doing that a lot in France, and let's not say foreign, but international and virtual community group. So first time for me. Thank you so much for having me again. I love taking certifications, and the BA one was a lot of fun. Certainly not the ACB one from IIBA. That one is way more difficult and cumbersome. But still, I'm trying to do that because somehow it's part of the, standard of knowledge. I've been doing Salesforce projects for a bit more than 8 years now. And I've been doing lots of stuff, customization, business analysis, obviously, as we know that business analysis can actually be found in many things, project management as well, and a bit of solution architecture. I'm actually taking the Dev 1 certification next week in the hope that I will be, is it the solution architect part of the pyramid? I'm hoping, or pyramid. I'm hoping that I will be, but this very last one certification is certainly daunting. So hopefully I'll get to take some time to revise well and apply my knowledge. What else? I've been a financial analyst in a past life. It's helping me today in the Salesforce world, especially when it comes to mastering Excel. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, you know what?
Thank you,
I'm gonna I'm just gonna pivot real quick because that's what I do on this group. I've been studying for this MuleSoft Associate, I think more than I even studied for the Sharing and Visibility Architect one, which I'm a little embarrassed, like overstudying for an associate exam, or maybe not overstudying, but it's such a pivot from business analysis to do like development stuff. How do you feel the studying for that development certification is helping your business analysis stuff? Because as soon as I studied some of that vocabulary that I took on the exam that I failed yesterday, I noticed when I was talking to a dev team earlier today, I was understanding a little bit more about what they were talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And even though the Dev 1 certification is not, the holy grail of what you need to do as a developer in Salesforce, I guess that it puts you, it gives you another mindset. And basically, and for me, it was okay because I already had that, working with SOQL and everything. But basically, it opens up your mind to some different things that you can actually use in your daily life, even though you're not a developer.
All right. Well, thank you for that and good luck on your exam. And with that, I'm going to pause real quick. Hold on, because I always forget this part, which is to take a photo of people. So let me see how I can figure out how to do that. I can't figure out how to do that. Can somebody else take a photo of us? Because I can't. I've got a big screen and two people on the screen, so it looks like it's just Pay and Beachhorn. I don't know why it's just you two on my screen, but
I don't know how to do that unless you stop sharing.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Maybe I should stop sharing for a second.
Well, there you go. Everyone.
There we go.
On screen. Oh, hey, Jason. I just noticed you. Loving all the faces. Just, oh, wow. We have 3 pages. Let me grab. Doing the jazz hands, everyone. 1. Hang on. I'm just.
You know these are going to go on a slide next month.
Hang on. Page 2. Oh, we don't have that many people putting on video. Hi.
That's okay. Thanks, Peg.
All right. We have that.
All right. Jean-Pierre, you are on.
All right, let's go. Thank you. I'm going to be sharing my screen. I guess a window is good because that way, if I share it like that and I do that, can you see a slideshow?
Yep, looks perfect.
Perfect. And can you still see a slideshow if I try and display my notes for myself?
All I see is slideshow. Your notes are in French anyway, so it wouldn't really.
Perfect. Perfect. Very lovely. All right. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for having me today. I'm Jean-Pierre Rizzi, so I've had the chance to introduce myself a little bit earlier. Let me tell you a little bit more. I'm a project manager at Texay. We are a French independent consultancy firm. And well, basically, of course, I love Salesforce and I love business analysis. But one of the things I love the most is, football. And unfortunately for my colleagues, or maybe for me, I love Olympique de Marseille. But what I love also in my spare time, I'm not only watching football, I'm collecting stickers. So it's kind of mixing up between personal and professional. I guess that's what the Salesforce ecosystem does. But that's currently the load of stickers I've been able to collect in the past few weeks, especially the ones from Czech Dreaming, as you can see, the little Cody with the beer. So amazing. And another thing I've been doing for the past 4 years is theater. So I've been performing in plays at a school near my home. And yeah, it's been very fun doing that, and actually trying to get out of the professional / not so professional Salesforce ecosystem and do something else. But apart from that, and more, as we said already, I am dedicating myself to the Slack community. I've got a small QR code there, which should take you to the community group on the Slack community portal. So it's a Paris one, of course, so it's going to be in French. But if you do want to follow up a bit, I'll be happy to have you on that page, and maybe talk about Slack a bit more, maybe in English at some other meeting. All right, so the objective for today is to understand the BA's role in data migration projects. And in doing so, I want to help give you the right tools and knowing the right deliverables to do the role well. I also want to try share lessons that I've learned and the common pitfalls. And really the goal for me today is to basically tell you, whoever you are, and maybe you come from a non-technical background, maybe you come from a non-even Salesforce background, and so on, you can definitely do the role of a business analyst in the context of a data migration. Data migration is not a technical subject. I could even say it is, of course, but we need business analysts actually taking ownership of data migration projects, because there are projects, and if there are projects, of course, we've got requirements and so on. We'll see that just a bit later, but you can definitely do it. It looks and sounds daunting, but don't be afraid. You can start today with what I'm trying to teach you a little bit, with a lot of humility, of course, because I've still got a lot to learn. But if you go ahead and after that study a bit more stuff, you can definitely do it and participate in a data migration project. So please don't be afraid. Or it's okay to be afraid, but just do it. For the migration context that we need to outline is that basically the typical projects you're going to have, they're going to be about the CRM overhaul. Maybe you're going to be merging systems as well, even different countries merging together in Salesforce. Sometimes it's just going to be about legacy cleanup. But in any case, it's going to be transformational. It's going to be important for your users. And there are going to be a lots at stake, and especially about data quality, traceability, and usability of your data. And so mixing that with what we know of the BA's role, and for me, when I think about how I am as a business analyst, to me, it's all about requirements, collaboration, and change. Really, we can say that even though you may not play the most important part in a data migration project, you're going to be at least a bridge between business, IT, and integrators and other technical people. And you're going to be the owner of the business coherence of the data migration. So knowing that, and as I've said already, data migration is a project in itself. And when I think about this, I like to remember the Hofstadter law, and I'm going to need my notes for this one, actually, because I don't want to mess it up. And so the Hofstadter law is actually, very frightening, because it says that it always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account the Hofstadter's law. So any project always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. So that is very, very important when we think of the what's at stake in a migration project. And you want to be there as a business analyst to help reduce that gap, that uncertainty that we are dealing every day in an IT project. So a quick word about my experience with data migration, and it's very diverse actually, and it may have gone kind of outside of the boundaries that you could expect someone with my profile to do. So I've been working on migrating data prepared by others because it was needed for my project. So I've been doing that with Salesforce Inspector Reloaded. And so basically what I was doing was the technical part of migrating the data and then having the results from Salesforce Inspector Reloaded, which is very well done for that. We'll talk about this a bit more later. And analyzing the results and communicating that to the technical teams and the business teams. I've also prepared and migrated data for small projects. So that's basically where you could tell me, wait, should you really do that as a Salesforce functional consultant? Well, when your client is actually unable to do that and that you have the mandate to do it within your project, and of course, you should check that with an engagement director if you work in a consultancy firm or your manager in any other situation. So basically, yeah, you could do it. I mean, for small loads of data, a few hundreds, a few thousands, it's totally manageable. And again, I come from a financial background, so I was pretty, I'm pretty okay with Excel, but it's definitely something that you can learn and ramp up. And it's nothing to be afraid of. I've also, of course, gathered requirements and drafted documentation for a developer to load. So I guess this is the heart of what you can expect as a business analyst in a data migration project. Of course, I was there at the end to test the data, and I've even worked on cleaning, reconciling, and migrating data from different legacy systems. I remember that it was an amazing project for a scale-up company, and they were working with Pipedrive. They also had data, very messy data, in Monday.com, and you can't blame them because Monday.com is basically inviting you to enter messy data in it. It's very good. It's a very good tool for many companies. But when it comes to taking that legacy data and to put it into Salesforce, you need to do some reconciliation. I got to do that. It was very, very interesting. And I've also managed data migrations as a project manager. So I think I've got a pretty well-rounded view of what is it to be working with data as a functional person. I'm not a technical person, so I couldn't work with an ETL tool or something like that. And by the way, this session is not about, bridging the gap between not knowing how to use an ETL tool and knowing how to use one. We are not there at all. You can, try that on your own. It's lots of fun, according to some people. But today we are really going to learn how you can, as a business analyst, with your natural, skills and competencies and mind, with your business analyst mind, how you can contribute in a data migration project. So about bad data. So we've been hearing about you got AI and Gen AI, and AI can't fix bad data and everything. So of course, data quality is important for AI, but working in data migration, we've been knowing that bad data is a nightmare for ages. It's not news to us. So it's been quite funny when I was hearing people about bad data and so on and so on. People working in data migration, they have been dealing with bad legacy data for ages, and they've had to work with that and to bridge the gap between good data or bad data and good data for a long time. So we are not discovering anything here, I guess. So about the data migration process, Depending on the size of your project, it can be pretty long and sequential. Of course, you start from the requirements. Basically, gathering requirements is the one place where you should start as a business analyst. And I guess with your skills, with our skills as business analysts, this is where we're going to be feeling the most at ease. The analysis of this data might not be something that you do straight away, but you will need to do it at some point, or at least talk to people who are able to do it, and get a lay of the land of the data we have. The mapping, and I'm gonna show that to you a bit later. It's definitely some part of the documentation you're gonna be doing. And then we got, let's say, extraction, transform, load. So these words, we know them in the context of the softwares doing ETL, but they are actually, actual terms of the process. And this is not something you should be concerned about. A developer is going to work on that, and you want to talk to that developer, and you're going to be working with that developer so that everything goes fine. But you don't have to do extract, transform, and load. Of course, if you're working on a small data migration, and basically you can master how to extract data from, I don't know, the old Dynamics CRM or Pipedrive from your client, and that you can actually easily transform it and load it with a Salesforce Inspector Reloaded or stuff like that, this is great. But this is really the part where a developer should come into play. And this is actually in small projects, we often talk about customization and how we operate with no code in Salesforce. When it comes to data migration in this kind of project, it's actually often, and of course, I'm really, looking forward to hearing what you have to say about that. But it's often the most technical part that you're going to have in that kind of project. You might not be doing any integrations, any APIs integrations. You might not be doing any developments, any LWCs, stuff like that. But if you have some sort of serious data migration, then a developer will come into play because it's all about scripting and so on. So I've put cleaning after extraction. Basically, when you take data from one legacy system to the new system, to the target system, you want to clean data. That's obvious. But I'm not sure that cleaning should come after extraction. We often say that the best is actually to try and clean data in your legacy system and then export it, especially because you're going to be living with that, data from the legacy system for a few months when you start the project up until the time you actually freeze the legacy system. So, it's kind of hard to actually try and clean every time a delta of records and stuff like that. So I guess that cleaning could actually come before extraction and could actually happen in the legacy system. Of course, cleaning, I didn't put a small astro on cleaning because cleaning can be a serious business. And some people, some analysts or consultants, let's call them like that, they have special tools to do that. And it can be very, very messy and very, very tricky. And obviously, further down the line, you're going to be testing, or at least you're going to be providing validation rules, or let's say a validation plan to test that for QA or other people. And then you're going to want to showcase that data within Salesforce so that users can see that you've actually, taken a lot of data from legacy system, or at least useful data from legacy system into the new system. So we need to understand the business needs. As I said, that comes first. And obviously, in the toolbox of business analysts, there are plenty of things you can use. I'm sure you've heard of them already. They've probably been talked about in this program, in this webinar or other webinars. It's all about what is going to be the business use behind the data. What are we going to do with it? When we want to go live with the Salesforce, we're going to have some legacy data from the source to the target, to our Salesforce environment. What do we want to do with that? And so how relevant is it gonna be? What are the rules to determine that? The basic criteria is, of course, that it's going to be useful and reliable. But you really want to think about that in a detailed approach, especially object by object, because you need to select which object you're going to migrate. And this is where it's very important to understand the data model. And even though you're only working as a business analyst in a project and you're not working as an admin or as a functional consultant in a project, you need to understand the data model and how objects relate to each other, especially the tricky standard objects that could be there between opportunities, quotes, orders, contracts. That's very important. You also want to determine what history you want to take. Maybe it's not useful to take all of the lost opportunities from 10 years ago. So it's very important to determine that, especially because that could actually lighten the load for your developer to import. So yeah, definitely you want to avoid migrating everything by default, because it's not going to be useful in Salesforce. It could even slow down the system. So you just got to be careful with that and determine very, very strong use cases with your business owners. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing the chat or anything, by the way, here, guys. I guess I'm doing okay on time. Any particular question we want to address right now?
No, you are good. Keep on rocking and rolling. Everybody's into it.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. All right. So the mapping. So the mapping is, quote unquote, a technical documentation, but it's actually not. It's called mapping and it can look daunting in some ways. Honestly, once you know what it is, it's not. Basically, it's defining the source fields and the target fields and how the data is going to go from the source fields to the target fields. So you want to understand what the format is going to be. You want to understand what the API name are going to be, because maybe one name in the source file is not going to look like at all, or one name in the source system is not going to look the same as in the target system. So obviously you want to determine that. You want to make sure that you standardize. For example, if you gather data from 3 different systems for 3 different countries about opportunities, obviously you want to standardize how they have pick list values and everything in there. One other thing I like understanding when I have a mapping and when I see the source data is understanding if I've got external IDs. This is very important. And again, it sounds technical, but it's not. An external ID is a way for you to uniquely identify one line in your Excel file that you're going to have, to import. And that external ID is going to be used further down the road, because you're going to be linking objects between them. You're going to want maybe to check data against one object or another or things like that. And so you want that external ID. It's paramount that you have it. Of course, you're going to have the Salesforce ID further down the line, and it's going to be great for doing all sorts of stuff. But you need something independent, and it needs to be unique. And I insist on that. The external ID needs to be unique. It's very simple to determine if one data is unique in Excel when you have the file in front of you. Of course, it can be a bit tricky if you have many lines in the Excel file or CSV file and so on. And in that case, you can get the help from a developer. But for regular loads and stuff like that, maybe 10, 15, 20,000, that's still okay. Normally your Excel can manage that very easily and it shouldn't scare you. You should be able to try and test that external ID that the legacy system is giving you. It's very, very important. So the key BA deliverables. So we talked about the mapping. That's not a BA deliverable per se, but that's definitely something you want to be consulted for. And that's definitely something you're going to kind of give a stamp on it to say, okay, I've gathered the business requirements to have this data, list of fields from X objects and so on, with a technical specification for it, which is the mapping. We could call that the, specification against the business requirements. And then but that mapping actually will come from one very important document. And if you're not doing the implementation yourself, you must demand that from the person doing that. This is the very least that they can do as far as technical documentation goes. You need a data dictionary. And so I've put a very quick example there. It's basically a data dictionary is basically the list of fields, the data type, the field length is very important. If there is any business rules linked to it, and a short description. If you had to do the mapping yourself, which you may not have to, but if you had to do it yourself, you would need a data dictionary. It's the basis to start with when you're working on data migration. You want to know what is the source, the target system's data dictionary. Obviously, it's good to have it for the source system, but it's kind of hard to get, especially when it's been a kind of a literally legacy system used for ages, where actually no one is kind of administering the thing anymore. So in that case, you will want to analyze the data itself to make sure of to reassure yourself as to what you are dealing with. But for the source system, for the target system, for the target system, you need that data dictionary, and you should demand it from any developer, any functional consultant creating the fields in the target environment. And then, of course, you want the validation, the test plan. So the test plan is about doing, okay, I've got all of these use cases, and you could definitely have user stories about data migration, because, you got the role, I want to, or I see each X, Y, Z data because I need to understand the context I'm working with in any given account, contact, and so on. You want to have those against those use cases. You want to have validation plans. So the validation plan is going to be about, test cases and making sure that you got the right data at the right place, and so on and so on. Of course, part of the validation plan will also be, in the broader picture, to understand how objects are linked together and how records are linked together, and the volumetry of records that you have imported as well. So it's very important. The validation plan, I would say, is, and again, let's discuss that later, but I think the validation plan is definitely the BA's program. And I think that if you kind of act as a proxy product owner, or as a product owner in a Scrum approach, in an agile Scrum approach, you're going to be, designing use cases and user stories. You want to have a validation plan in place to test those. And so data dictionary, mapping, you can work with the developers and other more technical roles to do that, but you want yourself to do the validation plan, because this is something that you've got, that you're going to be designing with the business themselves. Which data am I taking from the source file, from the source system? What data am I importing in the target system? What do I want to see? For which purpose? It's very important that you got a test plan to check that the requirements have been respected. Let me check that I myself have not missed any requirement I set for myself in my notes. Okay. All right, perfect. Yeah, I got that. Perfect. Key BA deliverables. Perfect. All right. We are right on track, I think. Key BA tools. So I've put Excel in there. I know that obviously not everybody has got a paid license with Excel. I myself have one, and if I were in the case of only using Google Sheets and everything, I would be using Excel because I'm used to Excel. But normally, you're just fine using any other spreadsheet tool to manage the data. I've been working on a Mac since I've arrived at TechSay. I haven't tried with the Numbers app, so I don't know what it's like. I guess it could be a good test case we could have. But yeah, if you want to have the standard, Excel is really the way to go. I don't have any shares with Microsoft or anything, but when you're used to one program, it's good to rely on it, especially because you're going to want to be using that XLOOKUP function. You're going to be using that every day when checking data, preparing data, maybe even because you want to match some data table to another. Obviously working with different records from different tables, you're going to be using XLOOKUP a lot to look up one ID from your table. So the ID kind of as in lookup with the ID from the parent record. You're going to be using diagramming tools as well, especially if you needed to, maybe adapt. I'm not saying that you should do the entity relationship diagram yourself. Again, that's more kind of a technical side. So depending on the size of your project, you might not have to do the ERD yourself. But at least if you needed to do a transformation schema or diagram or anything to understand how things are flowing, you definitely want to use a diagramming tool. I love draw.io, which actually changed name a few years ago. I guess now it's app.diagram.net. But of course, you got all of those very nice other diagramming tools like Lucidcharts, Miro. So you at least want to master one of them so that you can be a good how do you say that in English? A good force of proposition if you're needed on a transformation schema. And of course, you'll want to be using Salesforce Inspector Reloaded for many things. You may not have to import data with it because it can be taken care of by an ETL tool and by a developer. But Salesforce Inspector Reloaded is going to be amazing when you want to query data to see how some import is going. And in that case, you want some SQL knowledge to at least know how to query some data from some object with some kind of filter. So if you haven't started on Salesforce Inspector Reloaded yet, do it. It's amazing. It's an amazing tool, and you've got plenty of resources online about SQL, and it's actually very easy to to learn. So if you haven't started doing that, really, you should do that because even outside of the data migration scope, you're going to be using that a lot in your Salesforce endeavors. All right. So obviously, we said that business analysts are, at the heart of cross-team collaboration. And even though you might have a project manager, obviously you do have some sort of, someone managing the project. You'll want to make sure that, everything is squared in the RACI of your project. You want to make sure that, somebody who is, supposed to validate the requirements is there. You should be the one, I guess, drafting, designing the requirements, user stories, and validation plan, as we said. But you need to identify who is going to validate that. You need to identify the people who will help you clean the data or who will help the developer clean the data as well. So, if you're involved with a data migration project, you should definitely make sure that with project management and with the sponsors, you have defined a RACI matrix about all of the data migration tasks we mentioned. And so obviously working with a business and especially sponsors, you'll want to understand their priorities and the context. They won't be bored, with anything technical or things like that, but it's all about understanding what their priorities are in terms of data migration. Just like for the project, it's very important to see what are the business goals that the company wants to achieve by doing such data migration. Because, and I've not talked about it yet, but some companies actually choose not to do any data migration because they just want a clean slate, and they're like, it's okay, we won't have the history of opportunities of orders. We'll just take the accounts and contacts. That can happen because the source data is so messed up and everything. So it's very, very important to understand where the business is coming from. Obviously, when it will come to talking with developers and data owners or data migration owners, depending on the scope of their role, it's all going to be about feasibility and what they can provide in terms of performance. And hopefully on your project, depending on the size, again, you're going to have some quality assurance teams. And they're going to want some very nice, well-crafted test scenarios. And so you want to make sure that you can provide this to them. Otherwise, if you give bad test scenarios, they won't have good results, or it won't be, it won't be covering what's important in the validation. We're going to see that right after, by the way. All right, let me do a quick check of things I wanted to talk to you about. Oh, and one important thing, I think I've noted it somewhere after, but you'll have meetings, obviously, and workshops. It's part of the things we do as business analysts, is that we have requirements gathering, requirement elicitation workshops, and that's the same for data migration. And so it's something which is, transversal for all of your workshops, all of your meetings, and so on. You want to make sure that you take quality notes. And I guess that with GenAI and the tools we are using now, it's getting easier and easier, but you want to make sure that you get quality notes, at least the actions that are needed, some deadlines, and the owners of those actions. And so it's going to be very important that as a business analyst, even though it's not your role, let's say, all day, every day, you want to make sure that someone is actually dealing with that, because as you're very close to the business, they're going to be the ones after coming to you about, okay, what was the decision, how things are going, and everything. Again, business analysts are not project managers, but I guess we could say that we have a very important role, and that in some aspects we need to make sure that we can be what's the term, we can be responsible, we can be accountable as to what was happening when people were collaborating. So very important that you make sure, maybe not you, but you can actually give that to someone else, or decide to give that to someone else. But you need to make sure that you have quality notes and good actions when you come out of meetings. Very, very important. I cannot stress this enough. All right. So obviously you need to have representative business cases when you're going to be testing the migration. You're going to be, checking the data consistency and the usability. But so it's about number of records, obviously. So we had, 15,000 contacts to import. How many do I have in the target system? With the Salesforce Inspector Reloaded, it's very easy to do, to have that information. You want to check that you have the right data in the right column. In that case, I like to have some sample. Some say that if you take about 30 records in your whole data, even though you've got thousands, but some say that if you take a sample of 30 records or 30 something, whatever the pool, the bigger pool is, some say that it's very representative of the end results. I'm not sure if it's been scientifically proven, but I remember from some statistics courses that I had at university that 30 records, 30 something, is already a good number to test the data. All right. And 30 is already a lot. 30 takes time, to go ahead and check if you had the right accounts with the right opportunities, with the right opportunity products. It already takes time. So you need to figure that out and make sure that you have a relevant sample. And of course, you want to make sure that you got the right links between objects. Of course, are the quotes all linked to the right opportunities? It can happen that depending on the source data, things got mixed up and you have some quotes on some other opportunity, making duplicate opportunities and so on and so on. It can happen. In that case, I love to use reports in addition to Salesforce Inspector Reloaded, because I'm more at ease with reports and how we can group things. You can also group things with Salesforce Inspector Reloaded, but the query is a bit trickier to manage than easier queries in Inspector. But the grouping is very good, but you need to use it carefully. One thing I am sometimes, it's like crazy, but for some reason, some opportunities or some quotes and stuff like that, they're gonna have the same names in the source data because it was created like that, and maybe the automation in the source system was to create something with just the name of the product, and you can have 30 or 50 opportunities with the same name. Something that Salesforce admins know is that when you group something in Salesforce reports and they have the same name, the report can get confused, and then the data is not, you can't actually use that to actually check the grouping and check that, an opportunity has X quotes and so on and so on. So it's something that can be very, very messy, and you need to double check every time that you do some groupings and stuff like that the data that you're seeing is actually representative of what's going on in the platform. Okay. Governance and traceability. I think I love this part. I love this part because it's all about taking something which is painful, that is errors, and then making sure that you can solve them. So what you should have, again, you will probably never have to do the data migration itself if you're working on big projects, but the developer, the person who did the data migration, they must provide you with the post-load file. They must give you the file of what they have imported. Normally, it should come with the ID of the record imported. And in some other places, maybe, depending on the tool, it's going to be a CSV file in another folder, but you want to have that. You're going to have the errors. And the errors are going to be very important because you take that file, you want to have a look at it, and you want to make sure that you're able to translate the error types into actionable insights. Normally, the error types, they are, kind of well written. That is, they are, once you know the error type, you understand it, but you can't leverage it because you're going to have to, for example, if you're trying to insert, for example, an opportunity on an account, and the problem was that there were duplicate external IDs for this account. And so the error message is going to be understandable very easily for you because you're going to be used to it. But you need to make sure that you translate it and you use it in some spreadsheet to actually say, okay, we had that issue with such record and so on and so on. And that way you can actually go back to the previous file you used for account, for example, and use the Salesforce IDs to actually do something about it and modify the data. So it's very important that between the developer or the person doing the data migration and you, that you are able to actually understand each other on what the error types are and how you can translate those into business terms. Very, very important. Obviously, you wanna follow up with normally you can do that with an Excel. Very easy. One column, you put the name of the object. Maybe if you have several sources for that object and it was loaded in several batches, you want to do some more details about the sources. And then you want to put the number of records expected to be there and the number of records actually imported. And then, if it doesn't match 100%, that means that you have errors. You want to maybe give the link to the post-load file, or at least the version you've created with the actionable insights. And that way, the following morning, people can actually go back to it. You have a nice meeting and you say, okay, we have managed to import 95% of all of our accounts. 5% we were not able to, but we understand why and we can act upon it. It's very, very important that you are able to do that, because it's going to save a huge amount of time for people, not having to actually go in a post-load file, understand what's going on, put it in some format, and then acting on it. This is going to be a real added value that you're going to have as a business analyst. So obviously, once you got those errors, you're going to have an action plan, and you want to record, you want to have somewhere written the business justification of decisions. And I've actually written there what I said earlier, and which is very, very important. Take notes of that and actually, send back the file with the notes you took and the justification of decisions you took. And that way, what was decided about, bad accounts or something like that. Because in the end, you want to make sure that, if you decided not to import something and it was actually planned at the beginning and it was expected at the beginning, you want to make sure that, you're covered in case it's not imported and there is a good reason for it. Okay? All right, we are approaching the end of my presentation. I wanted to leave you guys with, some very, very basic things, but, when you've never done it and people don't tell you, it's very frustrating. And so hopefully today I can spare you some time and save you some time for your future data migration joys. And let's say that, you're going to have other things like, okay, I wish someone had told me, of course, but at least those someone told you. So you need to be careful about the historical data you will need for your new processes. If you plan to manage contract renewals, for example, in Salesforce, are you sure that all of the data you are importing for current open contracts is good to manage renewals down the line? Contract renewals are very, very important in so many businesses, especially as SaaS businesses are developing. You can see that with scale-ups, startups. You need to be able to manage contract renewals in the new system. Or maybe you've put a rule in place that you actually manage renewals in the old system, or in the ERP where it's been managed there for some time. It's okay, because it's so important to be able to guarantee to business owners, to sponsors, that renewed cash that they want to see coming, it's going to be well taken care of in the new system. We got validation rules as well. Imagine you've put a validation rule on the legal ID of an account, and because obviously you want a nice legal ID, which is nicely formatted and everything, but that legal ID is actually, missing or is not in the right format in the legacy data. I'm not sure that you will want to bypass the validation rules, as we often do in a data migration, because we don't want to be bothered with the new rule. If you actually use the legal ID somewhere down the line in your process, for example, I cannot create an order without a good legal ID on the account, then you're gonna be screwed, And so you want to make sure that when cleaning the data, you actually apply the validation rules that you're going to have. That way, users won't be bothered with all data needing to be cleaned by themselves. Or maybe it's something that you've decided they can do, it can happen. And in that case, you need a very good communication and a very good, carrot to give them, because you're asking them to clean in data basically. And, it's of course very, very cumbersome. You want to be careful about the dates on particular objects. Salesforce can be very nasty when it comes to standard objects and some behaviors around dates. And, even if it doesn't trigger on import that issue with the date, it's going to trigger somewhere down the line when the user is actually using the contract, the order, trying to add an order line item or something like that. So you want to make sure that you got your dates right and, maybe some other type of data for those standard objects. Okay. Activity history. I'm sure that you guys know what I'm talking about. By default in Salesforce, there is only 12 months of activity history data shown in any list view, in any query that you're going to do with Inspector Reloaded, in any report. The data is going to show on the activity timeline. That's one of the wonders of the activity timeline on the account, on the contact. But if you take many activities from the legacy data, and of course, you can have a very good business case for that, old activities, then you need to be careful that you won't be able to check that data with reports, with actually Inspector Reloaded. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but Inspector Reloaded is still fine, to check that. I'm not sure actually. I need to check again. Sorry about that. But the point is, be careful with activity history because it doesn't show exactly as you would like it to be verified in Salesforce. And if you take old events, old tasks, it's going to be a mess to validate that. Another very important point on tasks, and that's been a known issue for ages with Salesforce, but sometimes the completed date of the task, when you import a completed task, it's going to be the date of the import. That is very messy. It's horrible. And for now, even if the completed date time field could be in the scope of all of those audit fields, we are allowed to modify when we have a given permission and that we use the API, that we import, and we do that in the user interface. The completed date time of task is not within this scope. So it's a nightmare if you need to manage tasks in a data migration. And so you need to be prepared for this because it's always, bad when your client or when someone actually notices this. If you knew it already, it's always better to anticipate it. Very important, something to anticipate as well. Of course, you may not have to create users in the system if you're just a business analyst. You might be working with functional consultants and admin and so on. But you need to know that for some transactional data like orders, opportunities, quotes, and even tasks and events and so on, you may need to have inactive users as owners of the data. So you want to plan that when actually creating users in the environment. You want to make sure that you have at least, username, email, name, surname, some dummy profile. You don't even care actually because they're going to be inactive. They're going to be imported as inactive. And of course, they're not going to count towards your number of licenses. But you need to think about this if you have historical data with users that are gone from the company for a long time. And one last thing, I don't know what you guys think about this, but I like to identify data very clearly when it's been imported. And in some cases, it's very easy to do because in your query, in your filters, you put that it's been created by, the name of the user on some date, the date of the import. But sometimes you can't because, for example, you could put, the created date because that's one of the fields you can actually insert in a data migration. I recommend you do because it's great to know when something was actually created in the scope of the company, not only in the scope of Salesforce. And so when you have that, basically you can't rely on that date to filter on data that you have imported. So what I always ask that we create in Salesforce, or what I always create. But of course, if you're not creating fields in Salesforce, you should ask very nicely to the person doing that. You should ask for a technical source on the record, on the object. And you create that for every object that you're going to be, working on data migration for. And on that technical source, you can define a very clear, very unique thing you put for every object, every batch of things you import. And then it's going to be very easy to look up in the future. Okay. All right, guys. In conclusion, if I could give you just a bit more, best practices, I hope that you've enjoyed the session. You should start working and designing requirements very early for the data migration. Don't forget, it's a project in itself. Once you start designing requirements for the features in Salesforce, you should actually have your first meeting about data migration, really. Keep it simple at the beginning. Maybe you don't need to have all of the data for the go live. You don't have to have all of the data at a certain date. So try and be incremental about it. Keep it simple at first. That way you'll have a much better experience. And last but not least, and I don't know what you think about this, especially in the context of Agile Scrum, but I like to document everything. I like to be very, very, very detailed about the files I'm using, about the versions of the file I'm using. You should use versions in your file. You should have a nice presentation spreadsheet in your Excel files where you put the version history, who modified what last, and everything. You should document a lot. I think it's very, very important as a business analyst, again, because of the very, very, let's say, powerful position we have as a business analyst. It's very, very important that you document everything. All right, guys. Merci. Thanks a lot. That was all for me tonight.
Well, no, hopefully not all, because we've got questions.
Nice. Perfect.
All right. I think we're a little behind on time, so let's as quickly as we can get through some of these awesome questions. All right, first, can I assume the best practice is to migrate into a full sandbox first?
Oh yeah, definitely. You should, and that's part of the things that you're going to see with the project manager. But of course, you're going to have a plan of attack when it comes to testing. And for testing and performance purposes for the whole batch of data, you will want to do that in maybe a partial sandbox is okay. But if you have a lot of data, full sandbox definitely.
Excellent. All right. What do you mean by a value should be independent when you're talking about external IDs?
The external ID should be something that is there, as is, and you should not try and rely on the Salesforce ID that you're going to have in the end. You should try and find a strong external ID, which is very, very unique from the source file. Hopefully, you can actually query, or the person extracting the data can query the ID from the legacy system. And normally, an ID from a legacy system is going to be, unique, and it's going to be a good source for your work later down the road.
Could you talk about the correct order to migrate data into standard objects?
Oh, that's a good one. As far as standard objects go, I guess I would do accounts or users first, of course, always users first. Was that a trick? So users, obviously, because you want to have those as owners. Hopefully, I think you will want to have those as owners, because if you put an owner as the person importing, that's going to be very messy. Don't do that, please. So users, accounts, contacts. Then you can go ahead with opportunities. Then opportunity products. Then you can go ahead and do quotes, quote line items. Be careful about synchronization between opportunities and quotes. And then, I'm not going to do it all, especially because we may be lacking some time, but, then you got orders, contracts, assets, and so on and so on. You can always come back to updating things with a lookup ID, but it's a bit more messy, and sometimes you actually can't because, it's required field. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the standard objects we all know.
I love this one. As a business analyst, how far do you reasonably push a client on the data being good, recent, the fields are populated, and that you're not importing everything by default?
Now that's a tough one, especially because pushing the client into, the standards, the very good standards that you just gave, is about spending time on resolving things and spending money. So let's say that I try to be very persuasive from the start. You definitely want to talk about business value, and even kind of a monetary value for sponsors. It's going to speak to them. But honestly, sometimes, there is no convincing them. And in that case, it's very important. You want to have that documented in a summary that you will send, right after the meeting. Sometimes it can happen that you don't have that all nice and shiny data you wanted, technically speaking. It's okay, it's all about collaboration. But whatever things you think are, they can have a potential impact further down the road, you want to write that down in a summary and send that to the right person.
Cool. And then I'll pick one last one. So let's see, when you're dealing with error types, do you have ones that you reuse regularly, or do they come up when you do you have predefined errors, or how do you start building up your library of data errors?
Well, it will depend on the tool you're using to import data, but some error types that you can easily understand, and actually, you don't even have to translate it. You can just put it in some way in your summary of the migration. It's about the format of, maybe, I don't know, number fields, currency fields, and so on. Those are going to be very, very straightforward. The ones that you will want to, try and have a library of and try and anticipate more in terms of knowing what it says, I guess they are the ones about more technical stuff, and especially the ones related to parent IDs, parent record IDs and stuff like that, because you'll want to, and if you could even, define or design some sort of function in Excel, but you want to have that data that they are talking about. Inspector reloaded, something very easy. If you have a missing or a duplicate payment record, Salesforce Inspector Reloaded is going to give you the IDs, the Salesforce IDs of the parent records that they could match the current record you're trying to import. So obviously you got two of them. If you have the ability to actually retrieve those IDs, then you can very easily know what was imported before as a parent record. So that's the sort of thing you want to try and anticipate, and that, of course, you will have anticipated during the tests. Very important, because then you don't have to waste time when it comes to migrating data, and still you could have some errors when migrating into production before go live.
Well, thank you so much for being here. How can people reach you if they have additional questions? Because we did have a bunch of questions today.
I guess
Hot topic.
Yeah, I guess I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. So don't hesitate to send me a connection invite, and I'll be happy to answer your questions on LinkedIn. Yeah, no worries.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, guys, for your participation and for all of your questions and for being there. Amazing.
Awesome. And so, folks, please Jean-Pierre came through our LinkedIn, our Google form. So this is us amplifying business analysis voices in the ecosystem. So important. So please show the love in the chat while I rush through some SFBA news and opportunities, so we have some time for SFBA gripes at the end of this call. All right. So
sorry,
yes.
Have you stopped? You haven't stopped recording.
No.
Very quickly, I just want to add 2 points on data migration. And when you've engaged a consulting partner to come and do implementation, as Jean-Pierre said, data migration, data cleansing should already have been first foremost on your mind. When I come on board, when I want to do my kickoff, to do implementation, I actually want to see, and I've only had one client do that, have started their data cleansing work stream like months before, because if that isn't done, you're going to find that your implementation project finishes before your data cleansing work stream is done. So that's something to think about. Item number 2 is about in-flight data migration, which is when you have open records. So it's a little bit more complicated, something else to think about, how to migrate data and having a delta. I know that's probably something Jean-Pierre probably want to talk about, but no time. But just something to think about. It's, those sort of things are not clear cut. That's it. Thank you. I just want to add those 2 points.
No, those are excellent points, actually. All right. So everybody get your vouchers if you have any, and go take tests this week. Oh, sorry, that's the next one. Yes, go take some tests this week. So June 30th is the last day to register for Salesforce exams via Web Assessor, and July 13th is the last time you can take a certification via Web Assessor. So expect a lot of, I'm thrilled to announce I've recently achieved LinkedIn posts in the next 2 weeks. Get those congratulations ready to go. Also get your free AI training, still good till the end of the year. This Friday, if anybody wants to talk about how much to split user stories, we have 500 people that are actually, I was surprised there were even 500 people in the world that are interested in this topic. So join us on Friday to talk about Split Happens, User Story Showdown, to see how small we should keep our user stories. And then also, our Pay is releasing a new book this week. Woo! It's going to make her millions. Go buy that book. And calls for speakers. I have no idea what's going on with SoCal Dream, and I feel like the date changed, and like the last time I found out I was speaking was like 2 weeks before the event. So if you feel like making a surprise trip to California the next month, apply there. Otherwise, we've got New Zealand, Dallas, Oregon, ambiguous end dates, Florida Dreamin', Mexico Dreamin', and Buckeye Dreamin', all open. And want to come to speak to our group? Did Jean-Pierre inspire you? Come speak. QR code's right there. Love to amplify business analysis voices in our ecosystem. Thank you, folks. On that note, I'm going to say goodbye to our YouTube audience, and then we will open up the floor to whoever wants to chat. Thanks, everybody. See you next month.